Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about percent proportions. You've already learned how to solve a basic proportion, so we're going to review that really quick and then we're going to move into how to solve a percent proportion. The actual act of solving it is no different than what you've done before. It's more just getting it set up correctly. This is the new part. Alright, so let's start with a little bit of review vocabulary. A ratio is a comparison of two quantities. A proportion is two ratios that are set equal to each other. So here we have a basic proportion. Right? So I've got this ratio here, 2/5, is equal to this ratio here, 20 over x. So when we want to solve, we're going to cross multiply. So we're going to do our 2 times x and our 20 times 5. So 2 times x is going to be equal to 20 times 5. And now we can simplify that down. So 2 times x is 2x, 20 times 5 is 100. Now we're down to a simple one-step equation. So we need to undo that multiplication, and we do that by dividing. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and we end up with an answer of 50. X equals 50. And remember, always circle your answers. Okay, I want you guys to come down here and try these two on your own. Go ahead and pause the video. Okay, when we come back to class, I'll put those answers up so you can check your work. All right, a percent proportion looks like this. We're always going to have percent over 100. That's a given. One of your ratios has to be your percent over 100. Your other ratio can be is over of or part over whole. And we're going to talk about what those mean as we work through these examples. In a percent proportion, 100 is always part of the proportion. The other numbers will be given to you except one. The missing number will be your variable. You're going to solve by your variable by cross multiplying and then dividing by your coefficient. All right, so let's work on setting up the percent proportion and find the missing information. So you're going to be given, there's going to be 3 numbers that you're automatically going to have to start with, and then one missing number out of the 4. Well, one of those numbers, no matter what, is always going to be 100. So we're just going to place that there. And then we're going to put our percent, and then our is and our of. All right, so let's identify what are these is's and ofs. All right, so I'm first just going to read this. 5 is what percent of 8? All right, so I'm going to look for my is. 5 is. All right, so my is 5. All right, my of, so here's that word of 8. And so my of is 8. So they've given me a value for is, and they've given me a value for of. The one that's missing is that percent, because it says what percent. We don't know what percent. All right, so let's fill all this into our proportion. Should look like this. So we've got an x over 100 because we don't know what our percent is. My is was 5. 5 is. My of was 8. Okay, because it said of 8. I put that in, and now we can work on solving. All right, so how do we solve this again? Same way as what we did up above. So we're going to multiply our 8 times x and our 5 times 100. So it doesn't really matter which order you do them in. Okay, so 5 times 100 equals x times 8. Let's simplify that down a little bit. We have 500 is equal to 8x. Remember, when we actually multiply those together, we put the number out front, so it's a coefficient. All right, now we need to solve for x. So I need to undo that multiplication between the 8 and the x, so I'm going to divide both sides by 8. And we end up with an answer of 6.25% or 62.5% equals 8. And remember, we have to put the percent sign on this because we were looking for the percent. So make sure you're paying attention where your x is. If it's over the 100, we put a percent sign on our answer. Circle the answer. All right, let's come over here and try this one. All right, so we're going to set up, there's our basic. We always have 100 when we're dealing with percent proportions. Okay? We're always going to have that 100. Now let's figure out what our is, and what our of is, and what our percent is. So what number is 5.5% of 650? All right, well, I see that percent sign right there with a number. So there's my percent. I've got that. That's going to go right here over the 100. All right, what number is 5.5% of 650? All right, well, they gave me of 650. So there's my of. That's going to go down here. So the one that's missing then is my is. What number is? Right, so that's what's going to go up here. So let's see what it looks like all set up. I've got 5.5 over 100 equals x over 650. 5.5 was our percent, my is we didn't know, and my of was 650. All right, now we can solve. So we're going to multiply. We're going to multiply our diagonals. So we can do 5.5 times 650, 100 times x. Okay. And again, it doesn't matter which order you do it in, as long as you're multiplying the diagonals together. So 100 times x, or x times 100 is 100x, and 5.5 times 650 is 3,575. All right, so now let's see what happens when we work on solving this. So this time we need to undo that multiplication between the 100 and x. So we're going to divide both sides by 100, and we end up with an answer of x equals 35.75. You're going to notice I did not put a percent sign on it this time. That's because we already had a percent. That was our 5.5%. This time we were looking for the of, or the is. So no percent signs on here. The only time you put a percent sign on your answer is if the variable was over 100. Circle our answer, and we're done. All right, let's go over to the next page. I want you to try these two problems on your own. Go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, when we come back to class, we'll check those answers. All right, now let's look at one that's not necessarily an is over of. Remember, our other way to do this was a part over a whole. So we want to take a look at how that's going to work. We're still dealing with percents, so we're still going to have that 100. Whoops. Let's go back. All right, so let's come back. All right, so we're still going to have that over 100 piece. All right, so let's read this. In the library, 54 of the 90 books are history books. What percent of the books are history? What percent are not history? Write a percent proportion and solve. All right, there's two questions this problem is asking. First, they want to know what percent of the books are history. Then they want to know what percent are not history. We have two questions, which means we have to have two answers. So always pay attention to that. All right, so let's see what we have, what they've given us. They're giving us information about how many books are history books. So here we go. In the library, 54 of the 90 books are history. So a total of 90 books, okay? Some of them are history. This is going to be our is, right? Or our part, right? That's our parts, okay? Of the 90 books, okay? So since we had the word of, we could kind of count this as an is over of, or we could count this as a part and a whole. So I might even write that in. So we could say this is our part, and we could say this is our whole. We had a total of 90 books. 54 of them were history books. All right, so then they want to know what percent of the books are history. So what percent? We don't know the actual percent, so now we're going to fill in what we have. So we've got the 100, and then we got two more numbers to put in, and then we're going to have our variable. So our proportion will end up looking like this. What percent is 54 of 90? Now let's solve. So again, we're going to multiply our diagonals. Doesn't matter the order that you do this in. So 54 times 100 is going to equal 90 times x. All right, we can simplify that down just a little bit. And then to undo that division, or that multiplication, we're going to divide both sides by 90. We end up with 60%. So remember, we put a percent sign on this one because we were looking for the percent. So 60% of the books are history. All right, so I forgot to put that history up there because we were trying to figure out history. All right, now, what percent of the books then are not history? Well, there's a couple of different ways we could go about doing this. Let's just practice solving it the proportion way, okay? Just to have another way. You may know a quicker way, and when we come to class, I'm going to ask if anyone was able to come up with a quicker way to figure out this next part. But for now, let's do the proportion way. So we're looking for the percentage of books that are not history. All right, well, first we know how many books are history books. So let's figure out how many books are not history books. We know there's a total of 90. Well, if we subtract these two, that'll tell us how many are not. Okay, so 90 minus 54 gives us 36 non-history books. All right, so let's start filling this in. So what percent again, okay? Not history books. So there's our part. We're still working out of 90. Okay? We're still working out of 90. So we're going to have our 100. Okay? Our percent is we don't know. Okay? And we're going to base this out of 36 out of 90 books are not history. So let's fill in our proportion and let's do our cross multiplying. So x times 90, 100 times 36. And then we can simplify those. And then we're going to divide to undo our division. And we end up with 40% are not history books. Okay? So again, if you could come up with a faster way to figure this out without solving a proportion, I want you to share that in class next time. Okay? But for the purpose of our notes, we just wanted to get a little more practice with setting up those proportions. All right, try on your own. This is the last problem. So at this point, I want you to stop the video and go ahead and complete this problem. I'll see you in class.